When I pictured my wedding day, I never imagined anything extravagant. At 35, engaged to Ryan, I wanted something intimate. Just a backyard ceremony with wildflowers and the people who truly mattered. 20 guests max, wearing a veil I'd spent countless sleepless nights sewing myself, each stitch representing a promise. I asked my family for simple help: my mother Diane, brother Max, 28, and sister Lexi, 33. Nothing complicated. Some folding chairs, a playlist, and a homemade cake. They'd nod reassuringly, saying, "Don't worry, we've got you." And I believed them completely. The day before the wedding, I called to confirm everything was ready. Diane laughed dismissively. "Oh, honey, we didn't think it was actually important. It's just a piece of paper, right?" Max jumped in with, "Chill out, it's not like it's some fairy tale moment." My heart sank as I stood in my kitchen, clutching my phone while staring at the wildflower bouquet I'd picked from a field that morning. They hadn't done a single thing: no chairs, no music, no cake. Then I spotted it on Instagram, my family at my cousin Amber's bachelorette party. Limos, glitter, champagne flutes raised high with the caption, "Family First." I wasn't even invited. Swallowing my hurt, I forced a smile and told Ryan we'd figure it out ourselves. And we did. 10 friends showed up with mismatched chairs from their garages, and I walked down the aisle under sagging dollar store lights. I said "I do" with a tight throat, Ryan's hands steady in mine. Despite everything, it was beautiful. That night alone in our cramped apartment, I finally broke down. Sitting on the edge of our bed, still in my wedding dress, I cried. Not from the joy of marrying Ryan, but from the gut-wrenching sting of being nothing to the family I'd carried for years. They'd tossed my special day aside like trash, and I couldn't shake that emptiness, that sharp ache of being invisible to the people I'd given everything to. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness settled deep in my bones after crying myself empty. Ryan was still asleep beside me, breathing softly. For a moment I wished yesterday had never happened, but my phone buzzed, pulling me back to reality. I didn't want to look, knowing it would be them, but I grabbed it anyway, my fingers trembling as I opened our family chat. I typed quickly, "You skipped my wedding for Amber's party. I needed you there and you weren't." Diane replied first. "Don't overreact, honey. It's just a formality, not some big production." Lexi followed. "Geez, we didn't think you'd freak out over it. Chill." Max sent nothing but a text indicator, silently mocking me. I stared at their words, my chest tightening. Something inside me finally snapped. This wasn't just about missing my wedding. It was years of me pouring myself out while they took endlessly. I thought about Max's late-night calls begging me to cover his rent when his music gigs dried up. $600 here, $200 there, always with a, "You're the best, sis." Lexi's sob stories about needing her phone bill paid after another breakup, $80 a month like clockwork. Diane's quiet hints about her medications when her paycheck ran short, $1,150 wired without question. I'd been their safety net, working extra shifts at the restaurant, skipping vacations, telling myself, that's what family does. And now my wedding, my one moment, was just a piece of paper to them. The hurt transformed into anger, hot and sharp. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I typed one final message. "Thanks for showing me where I stand." My thumb hovered over the send button, then pressed it. Before they could respond, I tapped those 3 dots next to the chat name and hit leave group. The silence that followed felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. But I wasn't done. I opened my bank app, the cold glow illuminating my face. Max's Netflix account tied to my card for 2 years? Cancel. Lexi's latest Venmo request, $50 with a gas pump emoji? Declined. Diane's auto pay for utilities that I'd set up when she almost lost power last winter? Stopped. Each tap severed another rope they'd tied around me. I didn't feel the guilt I expected. Instead, my chest loosened like I'd been holding my breath for a decade and finally let it go. I set the phone down, my hand steady now, and leaned back against the headboard. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. I realized I'd been waiting for this moment, for permission to stop being their everything. Ryan stirred, rolling over with a sleepy squint. "You okay?" he mumbled, his voice rough. I looked at him, his messy hair, the way his eyes softened when they met mine, and felt something warm stirring inside me. "I will be," I said, and meant it. He sat up, resting a hand on my knee through the blanket. "You don't owe them anything, you know. Not a damn thing." His words sank in, heavier than they should have because I'd never allowed myself to believe them before. I'd always thought love meant giving until you're hollow, that family meant carrying their weight no matter how much it crushed you. But sitting there with Ryan's hand grounding me, I saw it differently. They'd taken my trust, my time, my money, hell, my wedding, and given me scraps in return. I nodded slowly, and Ryan pulled me into his chest. I didn't cry this time. I just rested there, feeling the first real crack in the wall I'd built to keep them in and me out. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a start, a jagged little edge of something new. The next morning hit like a freight train, not with noise, but with a flood of texts lighting up my phone before I'd even poured my coffee. I sat on our faded couch, Ryan still in the shower, and watched the screen glow with their desperation. Max first. "Yo, Netflix is down." "What's wrong with your card?" Then Lexi. "I can't get to work. I'm out of gas. Send me $40 now." Diane's came last, her tone sharp. "My lights flickered all night and the heat's acting up. Why did you stop the payments?" I didn't reply. I just stared at the messages stacking up, each one more frantic, and felt a strange, quiet thrill, like I'd flipped a switch they didn't know I had. Ryan patted out, towel around his neck, and glanced at my phone. "They're losing it, huh?" he said, a half smile tugging at his lips. I nodded, setting the phone face down. "Let them," I said, and meant it. For once, I wasn't running to fix their messes. Then my phone pinged again. Not a text, but an Instagram notification. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got me. It was Max's story, a selfie with Amber, both grinning under neon club lights, captioned, "Real family shows up when it counts." The timestamp hit me like a slap. 8:47 p.m., right when I'd been saying my vows under those sagging lights, my voice shaky but sure. He'd posted it last night, hours after I'd left the chat, like he wanted me to see it. My throat tightened as I scrolled through the comments, cousins liking it, a few yes and heart eyes emojis. No one mentioned me. No one asked where I'd been. I'd been erased, not just from their day, but from their story, turned into some footnote they could mock. I dropped the phone on the cushion, my hands clenching into fists. Ryan saw my face and sat beside me, his damp shoulder brushing mine. "What now?" he asked, voice low. I showed him the post, and his jaw tightened. "That's low, even for him," he said. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and let the anger simmer. I could have texted back, called them out, but what was the point? They'd twist it, say I was dramatic, oversensitive, like they always did. Instead, I pictured it. Max scrambling when his Hulu wouldn't load mid-binge, Lexi stranded at some gas station, Diane fumbling with a flashlight when the power dipped. They'd built their lives on me, on my overtime checks, my sure I'll help every time they stumbled. And now the ground was giving way. I'd spent years stitching their safety nets while they danced on tightropes, never once looking down to see who was holding the ropes. And what did I get? A wedding they didn't show up for, and a brother who'd rather flex for Amber than lift a finger for me. The Instagram post wasn't just salt in the wound, it was a knife, and he twisted it with a smile. Ryan's hand found mine, warm and rough from his construction job. "They're not worth this," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my knuckles. "You've given them enough." I turned to him, his green eyes steady, and felt a pang, not just hurt, but something fiercer. He was right. I'd poured myself into them until I was hollow, thinking that's what love looked like. But love doesn't leave you invisible. It doesn't post selfies while you're promising forever to someone else. I squeezed his hand back, harder than I meant to. "I'm done carrying them," I said, my voice firm for the first time in days. He nodded, pulling me against his side. And we sat there, the phone silent now, their pleas unanswered. Outside, the world hummed. Cars passing, a dog barking down the street. But in here, it was just us. And the weight I'd shed felt like a victory. They could panic all they wanted. I wasn't their savior anymore. And that Instagram post? It only proved why. The quiet after cutting them off didn't feel real at first, like I was holding my breath, waiting for the guilt to crash in. But it didn't. Instead, I sat on our balcony that afternoon, a chipped mug of tea in my hands, and let my mind drift back. I needed to understand how I'd gotten here, how I'd let them hollow me out until my wedding became just a piece of paper. It started when I was 17, the year Dad walked out. Diane was a mess, crying into her coffee, bills piling up. So I got a job at the corner store, ringing up cigarettes and candy bars after school. I'd slip her my paycheck saying, "It's fine, I don't need much," and she'd hug me, call me her rock. Max was 15 then, sneaking out to play basement parties, and Lexi, at 21, was chasing some loser who'd crash her car and leave her stranded. I was the one who held it together, the one who didn't break. By 21, I'd saved enough for a beat-up Toyota while they floundered. Max spinning tracks for empty rooms, Lexi bouncing between dead-end jobs and worse boyfriends. The ask started small. "Can you spot me $100 for rent?" from Max. Or, "I'm short on groceries just this once," from Diane. I'd say yes because they were family, because I could. But once turned into always. I'd pick up extra shifts, skip nights out, while they leaned harder. Max's $100 became $1,000 when he swore he'd make it big someday. Lexi's groceries morphed into $300 for fines after she totaled her car drunk, no insurance. Diane's utilities, her meds, her just until I'm back on my feet. It added up. I stopped counting after $25,000, but I kept a mental list. Every late-night wire, every "you're a lifesaver," that faded to silence. They'd praise me. "You're the strong one, the glue." Until it wasn't praise anymore, just expectation. When I met Ryan at 29, something shifted. He saw me. Not the fixer, not the bank, just me. We built a life in our tiny apartment, and when he proposed, I let myself want something. A wedding, a day that was mine. I told them about it over dinner one night, my voice shaky with hope. Diane smiled thinly, said, "That's sweet, but you'll figure it out, right?" Max smirked. "Sounds chill, no big deal." Lexi didn't even look up from her phone. I should have seen it then. Their nods were hollow, their interest fake. But I kept going, planning alone, asking for scraps of help they never meant to give. Amber's wedding was different. Her third engagement, a circus of tool and catering. They all RSVP'd without blinking. I'd Venmo'd Diane $200 for gas to get there, not knowing it would be the same weekend I'd need them. My day was too small, too quiet, not shiny enough to matter. Looking back, I saw the pattern. I'd been their crutch so long they forgot I could fall. Max never made it big. He crashed on friends' couches, texting me for Wi-Fi passwords. Lexi's messes got messier, DUIs, evictions, and I'd clean them up, thinking it proved I was good. Diane leaned on me like I was her second chance, not her daughter. They took my money, my time, my trust, and gave me nothing but weight. Ryan changed that. He'd cook me dinner after my shifts, ask about my sketches, remind me I wasn't just a means to their ends. My wedding was my line in the sand, my first real no, and they couldn't even pretend to care. Amber's night got limos and cheers, mine got shrugs and a slap on Instagram. I sipped my tea, the steam curling in the cool air, and realized I'd been blind, not to their flaws, but to my own worth. I thought love meant bleeding dry for them. That family meant carrying their failures on my back. But it doesn't. It never did. And out here, with the city buzzing below and Ryan's laugh drifting from inside, I knew I wasn't going back to that lie. For days after I cut the cord, they showed up unannounced, like a storm rolling in. I was in the kitchen chopping onions for dinner when the doorbell buzzed hard and fast. Ryan raised an eyebrow from the couch, but I knew who it was. I wiped my hands, took a breath, and opened the door. Diane marched in first, her face tight with that disappointed teacher look she'd perfected. "This tantrum of yours has gone far enough," she snapped, arms crossed. Max slouched behind her, hoodie up, sprawling onto my armchair like he owned it. Lexi came last, tossing her bag on the counter with a huff, her eyes sharp. "You're seriously mad over a little party?" she said, voice dripping with scorn. I stood there, knife still in hand from the cutting board, and felt the air thicken. They hadn't come to apologize. They'd come to demand I fix their chaos, like always. I set the knife down, slow and deliberate, and faced them. "It wasn't a party," I said, my voice low but steady. "It was my wedding. You chose Amber's night over me after I've carried you all for years." I stepped closer, the words spilling out. "Max, I've paid your rent, your subscriptions, thousands. Lexi, your fines, your phone, your excuses. Diane, your bills, your meds, every time you couldn't manage. I asked for one day, one, and you couldn't even show up." Their faces froze, caught off guard, but I wasn't done. "You didn't forget? You decided I didn't matter." Silence hung heavy, and then Diane waved a hand like she could dismiss it. "We sold your veil on eBay," she said, casual as if she'd pawned an old lamp. "Figured you were done with it after the fuss." My veil, hours of stitching, my quiet pride, gone for 25s. My vision blurred, but I held my ground. Lexi snorted, leaning against the counter. "And I used your venue deposit for Amber's gift," she added, smirking. "You weren't using it, so I got her that spa package. $200 well spent." My breath caught. That deposit was my savings, my trust, and she'd swiped it like it was spare change. I gripped the counter's edge, fury boiling up. "You stole from me," I said, voice shaking now. "Both of you." Max finally looked up, annoyed. "Chill, it's not that deep. You're acting like we killed someone." Diane nodded. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We're family, not your enemies." I laughed, sharp and bitter, and it startled them. "Family?" I said. "Family doesn't ditch you, sell your stuff, steal your money, then act like you're the problem." Emma walked in then. She'd been in the bathroom, heard it all. She stopped short, eyes wide, then stepped beside me. "You're unbelievable," she said, glaring at them. "You treat her like a damn ATM, and when she stops giving, you pull this? Selling her veil? Stealing her deposit?" Her voice shook with anger I hadn't found yet. "You're not family, you're parasites." Diane snapped, "Stay out of this, Emma." But Emma shook her head. "No, I've watched her bleed for you, and I'm done." She grabbed her jacket and walked out, the door clicking shut like a gunshot. I turned back to them, calmer now, cold. "I'm not your bank anymore. I'm not your fix. Get out." They didn't move at first. Max scoffed. "You're going to regret this." Lexi rolled her eyes, snatching her bag. "So dramatic. Good luck without us." Diane lingered, her mouth opening like she wanted to argue, then closed it. "You'll come crawling back," she muttered, and followed them out. The door slammed, and the apartment went still. Ryan stood up, crossing to me in 3 steps, his hands finding my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked, searching my face. I nodded slowly, the weight of their words, their actions settling in. The veil, the deposit, their entitlement. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, deliberate and cruel. But standing there with Ryan's warmth against me, I felt something solid. I'd faced them, named it, and sent them packing. The sting was there, raw and deep, but so was a spark. A fierce, stubborn thing that said I was done bending. The days after they stormed out stretched into weeks, and their world started crumbling piece by piece, like a house of cards I had stopped holding up. Max's power got shut off. I heard from a mutual friend he was couch surfing again, cursing my name. Lexi's car got towed after she couldn't pay the lease. She left me a voicemail, voice shrill. "I'm stranded. This is on you." Diane's phone went dark, her texts replaced by a single email. "Heat's out. Bills are piling up. How could you do this?" I didn't respond. I sat on our couch, legs tucked under me, and let their words bounce off the walls without sinking in. Ryan watched me from the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, and said, "They're figuring out life without you." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. "About time," I said, and felt true. Their chaos wasn't my burden anymore. I'd handed it back, and they didn't know what to do with it. But it wasn't all silence. Lexi called again a week later, her tone softer, cracked. "I'm sorry, I screwed up, okay? I shouldn't have taken that money." I listened, finger hovering over delete, and let it play out. "I'm in a mess now, and I get it. I leaned too hard." Her voice broke, but I didn't call back. Max took a different tack, posted a rant on Twitter. "Some people turn their backs on blood over petty BS. Loyalty's dead." He got 3 likes, one from Lexi. Diane sent a letter, handwritten, shaky, saying, "We're struggling, but we're still your family. Think about that." I folded it into a drawer unopened after the first line. They wanted me to feel it, to cave. But I didn't. I'd spent years drowning in their guilt trips. This time I stayed on shore, dry and steady. Then the light came. Emma texted me daily. Memes at first, then, "You deserve a real celebration." She and Ryan's brother Alex planned a late reception. Just 12 people, folding tables in Alex's yard, fairy lights strung up like stars. I wore jeans, Ryan a flannel, and we danced to a playlist Emma made, laughing when the speakers crackled. No one asked for money or favors, just showed up, hands full of potluck dishes and hugs. Later, a package arrived at our door. No note, just a quilt, soft and blue, stitched with tiny stars. I knew it was from Olivia, Max's ex. She'd always been kind, even when he wasn't. I draped it over our couch, ran my fingers over the threads, and felt my throat tighten, not from pain, but from this quiet proof I wasn't alone, not really. Amber texted too, out of the blue. "Sorry they were awful. I should have said it sooner." I typed back, "Thanks," and left it there. A small bridge I didn't need to cross yet. Their mess kept spinning. Max lost his DJ gear to a pawn shop. Lexi's job fired her for no-shows. Diane's landlord sent warnings. But I didn't flinch. I walked our apartment one night, Ryan humming behind me as he washed dishes, and felt the air shift. No buzzing phone, no late-night pleas, just us, our little life pieced together without their weight. I stopped by the window, looking out at the streetlights flickering below, and realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for their apologies, not for their change. Emma's laugh from that party echoed in my head. Olivia's quilt warmed my hands, and Ryan's voice pulled me back to now. I'd built something small, messy, real, and they couldn't touch it. The veil was gone, the deposit too, but what they'd taken didn't define me anymore. I turned to Ryan, his sleeves rolled up, and joined him at the sink, bumping his hip with mine. "You're humming off key," I teased, and he grinned, splashing me with suds. For the first time in weeks, I laughed, loud, free, mine, and knew I'd made it through their storm, not just intact, but stronger. It's been 8 weeks since I shut the door on them, and I'm not just surviving, I'm alive in a way I never knew I could be. The apartment's quiet now, no buzzing phone pulling me into their crises. Ryan and I dance in the kitchen to old rock songs, Olivia's quilt draped over the couch like a hug. Emma drops by with paint swatches for our walls, insisting teal's my color, and I've started sketching again. Wildflowers, faces, things I'd forgotten I loved. The sting of the veil lingers, Lexi's theft bites, Max's post flickers in my mind, but I don't bend. I stand taller, shoulders loose, breathing easy. Lexi's texts trickle in. "Hope you're okay. Miss you." But I don't reply, not out of spite, just clarity. I'm not her lifeline anymore. Max's Twitter rants about fake family fade to silence, no likes to fuel him. Diane stopped reaching out, her absence loud but final. I don't miss the weight they tied to me. If I have a kid someday, I'll tell them the truth. Love isn't a debt you owe. Family isn't a chain. I've built mine here. Ryan's steady hands, Emma's fierce loyalty, Amber's quiet amends, even Olivia's quilted kindness. I'm not the bank, the fixer, the invisible sister. I'm me, whole for the first time. Last night I stood in our bedroom, the lamp casting a warm glow, and felt it. Safety. Not from promises or backup, but from knowing I've got myself. They called me selfish, dramatic, cold, and I took it, carried their labels until I saw them for what they were: lies to keep me small. I'm not the villain for choosing peace, for guarding this life I'm building with Ryan. I'm the one who walked through their fire and came out unburned. They're still out there, spinning their chaos, but it's not my story anymore. I wake up light, no guilt, whispering I failed them. Ryan says I smile more, and he's right. I feel it. Whole and free. I chose me, and if that's the crime they'll never forgive, I'll wear it proudly. This is my legacy. A spine, a heart, a life that's mine. But I'm skipping ahead. Let me tell you how it really unfolded after that confrontation in my apartment. The morning after I threw them out, I woke to Lexi calling my workplace. My coworker Jen texted, "Your sister's saying there's a family emergency? Should I put her through?" I replied with a simple, "No. Block that number, please." It felt strange. I'd always dropped everything when they claimed emergency before. But this time I knew better. That afternoon, Max showed up at the coffee shop where I sometimes worked on my sketches. He slid into the chair across from me uninvited, eyes bloodshot. "Look," he said, voice low. "This has gone too far. Mom's a wreck. Lexi can't get to work, and my landlord's on my ass." I closed my sketchbook slowly. And, his voice rose. "And we need you to stop this punishment crap. It was just a stupid wedding." The barista glanced over, concerned. I smiled at her reassuringly, then turned back to Max. "It wasn't punishment when I started," I said, keeping my voice even. "It was boundaries. It's becoming consequences now." "What does that even mean?" He ran a hand through his unwashed hair. "It means your problems aren't mine to fix anymore." He leaned forward, desperation creeping in. "I'll lose my apartment. Then you'll learn to pay your rent. You know I can't afford—" "Neither could I cut in. But I worked 2 jobs while you bought DJ equipment and new sneakers." His face hardened. "So that's it? Years of family and you're out?" I gathered my things slowly. "Family works both ways, Max. I was in, you 3 were out. Now I'm evening the score." As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist. "We're blood." I pulled away gently. "Blood didn't matter when you posted from Amber's party during my vows." I walked out, leaving him there, and didn't look back. That night, Diane left a voicemail, her voice breaking between words. "I don't understand. What happened to my sweet girl? We're drowning here. Your brother might be evicted." Ryan found me listening to it in the bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me and held my hand while I played it 3 times. When I finally put the phone down, he asked, "What are you thinking?" I leaned against his shoulder. That I've heard this message before. Different words, same script. "We're drowning, save us. Where's my sweet girl?" And I'm wondering when I became responsible for 3 adults who refused to take care of themselves. He nodded, rubbing small circles on my back. "You didn't. They made you believe that." "I let them," I whispered. "You were a kid who grew up thinking love meant sacrifice. They were adults who took advantage." We sat in silence for a while, the bathroom fan humming overhead. "I'm not calling her back," I finally said. "I know." A week passed, then 2. The calls slowed, but the financial impact on them deepened. Max lost his apartment. Not an eviction threat this time, but the real thing. He posted about it on social media, carefully framing it as betrayal. When your own sister has the means to help, but chooses cruelty instead. 10 likes, 20 comments of sympathy from people who didn't know the whole story. Lexi's car was repossessed, the same one I'd made 3 payments on last year when she claimed she'd lose her job without it. Diane's utilities were shut off one by one, and word reached me that she was spending evenings at the local library because they had heat and light. Part of me twisted with guilt, old habits, but a stronger part stood firm. They'd had every opportunity to build stability, to save, to work extra hours like I had. Instead, they'd counted on me, their safety net, never imagining I might one day step aside. Meanwhile, I was healing. With the money I wasn't sending their way, Ryan and I started planning a real honeymoon. Just a weekend at a lakeside cabin. Nothing extravagant, but ours. Emma and her girlfriend helped us find a place, excitedly showing us photos of the dock and the sunset view. "You deserve this," Emma said, squeezing my hand at brunch one Sunday. "Both of you." I believed her, more and more each day. Then came the ambush. I was leaving work late, the parking lot nearly empty under flickering lights, when I spotted them, Diane, Lexi, and Max, standing beside my car. My steps faltered, but I forced myself forward, keys gripped tight between my fingers. "Intervention time," Lexi announced as I approached, her tone brittle with false brightness. "We're worried about you," Diane added, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. "At 9 p.m. in a dark parking lot?" I asked, eyebrow raised. "Try again." Max leaned against my car door, blocking my entry. "We've been talking. You're not yourself. It's like you've turned cold overnight." I laughed, the sound sharp in the empty lot. "Overnight? I've been taking care of you three for 15 years. "And now you're not," Lexi said, like she was pointing out something I'd missed. "That's not normal." "Neither is stealing my venue deposit or selling my wedding veil," I replied calmly, "or skipping my wedding for a party." Diane stepped forward, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "We've all made mistakes, but this cutting us off financially, it's extreme. It's hurting real people, your family." "Where was this worry when I worked 60-hour weeks to keep your lights on?" I asked. "When I skipped doctor visits because I paid for yours instead?" They exchanged glances, a silent conversation I recognized all too well. The "how do we handle her" look. "We need help," Max finally said, dropping the pretense. "Real help. I'm sleeping on couches, Mom's place is freezing, Lexi can't get to work." "I lost my job," Lexi interrupted, arms crossed. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. "What's your plan?" The question hung in the air like smoke. They had no plan. They'd never needed one before. "Our plan," Diane emphasized, "was family helping family, like we've always done." I shook my head. "No, like I've always done." "Look," I said, softening my tone slightly, "I can give you advice. I can point you to resources, but I'm not opening my wallet again." Max scoffed. "Resources? We need cash, not a pep talk." "That's the problem," I replied. "You've never learned to solve anything without my money." Lexi's face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to watch us suffer?" I looked at each of them, really looked. Diane, with her practiced, worried expression. Max, disheveled but wearing new sneakers. Lexi, mascara perfect despite her crisis. "I watched you all choose Amber's party over my wedding," I said quietly. "I watched you sell my handmade veil. I watched you steal my venue deposit. Suffering has consequences, and for once, they're not falling on me." I reached for my car door, and this time Max moved aside. As I got in, Diane leaned down to the window. "Ryan's changed you," she said, her final attempt. "You were never this heartless before him." I started the engine. "Ryan saw what you did to me. He just helped me see it too." I drove away, watching them shrink in my rearview mirror, 3 figures standing under a streetlight, suddenly facing a world without their safety net. When I got home, Ryan was waiting with takeout and a worried expression. I told him about the ambush, my hands shaking slightly as I unpacked the food. "They tried to blame you," I said, setting down containers harder than necessary. "Said you changed me." He nodded, unsurprised. Classic move. If they can't control you, blame the outsider. "Does it bother you?" I asked, suddenly concerned. He laughed, genuine and warm. "Are you kidding? I'm proud to be the bad influence that helped you find your backbone." I smiled then, real and full, and we ate on the couch, legs tangled together, talking about the lake cabin instead of my family's latest drama. The next day, Olivia, Max's ex, messaged me. "Hey, I heard what's going on. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Max borrowed thousands from me too. Never saw a dime back." It wasn't a surprise, but the confirmation still stung. "I'm sorry he did that to you too," I wrote back. "Don't be. We both learned eventually. Some people just see others as resources, not people." Her words stayed with me as the weeks passed. Resources, not people. That's exactly how they treated me. An ATM with emotions they could manipulate when the balance ran low. Diane tried a new approach next. She showed up at my workplace, making a scene in the lobby about being a poor mother abandoned by her ungrateful daughter. My boss, thankfully, knew enough about my situation to have security escort her out, but not before she'd tearfully announced to anyone listening that I was letting her starve. That night, I cried for the first time since cutting them off, not from guilt, but from the humiliation of having my family drama exposed at work. Ryan held me, his steady heartbeat against my ear. "They're desperate," he murmured into my hair. "They're losing control, so they're escalating. What if they never stop?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "Then we'll handle it. Restraining orders exist for a reason." I hadn't considered that option before, legally keeping them away, but the idea settled into me like a seed. Not yet, but if needed, yes. 3 months after the wedding, something shifted. Max got a real job, not a DJ gig, but actual steady employment at a warehouse. Emma saw him there when making a delivery for her company. "He looked different," she reported over coffee. "Less entitled. He even seemed embarrassed to see me." I nodded, stirring my latte. "Good for him. Do you want to know anything else?" she asked carefully. I considered the question. Did I? Part of me was curious. Were they surviving, learning, changing? But a larger part knew that information was a hook they could use to pull me back in. "No," I said firmly. "I'm glad he's working. That's enough." Lexi texted less frequently now, and when she did, the tone had changed from demands to awkward small talk. "It's cold today," or "That new movie looks good." I rarely replied, and never with more than a word or two. Diane was the most persistent, cycling through anger, guilt trips, and occasional attempts at normal conversation. I blocked her number after she sent a midnight rant about family loyalty, but not before saving screenshots of her most manipulative messages, reminders of why I'd made this choice. 6 months after the wedding, Ryan and I finally took that honeymoon. The lake cabin was everything we'd hoped. Peaceful, secluded, ours. We hiked during the day and sat by the fire at night, talking about future plans without the shadow of my family's next crisis looming over us. On our last night there, watching the sunset from the dock, Ryan squeezed my hand. "You know what I just realized? This is the longest stretch I've known you without you being stressed about them." I leaned against his shoulder, considering this. "You're right. 6 months without being anyone's emergency contact. How does it feel?" I closed my eyes, feeling the last warmth of the sun on my face. Like I can breathe all the way down to my toes. When we returned, there was a letter waiting. From Max, not a text or social media message, but an actual handwritten letter on lined paper. "I'm not asking for anything," it began, which already set it apart from every communication we'd had in years. "I just wanted to say I get it now. Working every day, paying my own bills, it's hard. I never appreciated what you did. I'm sorry about your wedding, about the post, about everything. Not expecting forgiveness, just wanted you to know. No manipulation, no veiled requests, no but family guilt trips. Just an acknowledgement." I didn't respond immediately. I tucked the letter in my drawer next to Diane's unopened one from months ago and let it sit there while I processed. A week later, I sent a short text. "Got your letter? Thank you for understanding." He replied simply, "I'm trying to." It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. We were nowhere near that. But it was the first crack in a wall I'd built to protect myself. Not to let them in, but perhaps to let some of the hurt out. Lexi and Diane hadn't reached that point yet. Lexi was still playing victim on social media, though the posts had dwindled as fewer people engaged. Diane had apparently told relatives I'd had some kind of breakdown rather than admit the truth. But I was past caring about their narratives. My story wasn't theirs to write anymore. 1 year after my wedding, that day they'd dismissed as just a piece of paper, Ryan and I hosted a dinner party. Emma and her girlfriend, Olivia and her new boyfriend, a few friends from work. We ate at our table, no folding chairs this time, drank inexpensive wine, and laughed until our sides hurt. Looking around at these people, none related by blood, but all here by choice, I realized I'd built something real. A chosen family, bound not by obligation or guilt, but by mutual respect and genuine care. The journey from that disappointed bride crying in her wedding dress to this woman hosting dinner parties hadn't been smooth or painless. There were still days I doubted myself, still moments I missed the fantasy version of family I'd never actually had. But those moments grew fewer and farther between. The guilt loosened its grip. The what-ifs lost their power. When Emma raised a glass that night toasting to Family We Choose, I felt it settle into place, the final piece of understanding I'd been searching for. Family isn't who has to love you. It's who chooses to, day after day, even when it's inconvenient. It's not who takes until you're empty, but who gives until you're full. Max might eventually earn his way back into some version of my life. Lexi and Diane might not, and for the first time, I was truly okay with either outcome. Because that piece of paper they dismissed, it wasn't just a marriage certificate, it was my declaration of independence.